Hello, we're dealing with my reader, Slavery in America, and there's a particular essay. I've done this before, but I want to go back and do it this version, newer version, because I'm probably going to delete the older version. And it's an essay called The Slave Life Cycle. We need to know what we're coming out of so that we know what we're going into. Because what the United States is going through, we're going to go through another reconstruction. And like the last one, it is built around race as one of the things race, economics, which was slavery and economics. And again, the black Americans in the center of it because we were never really completely freed. We were freed, re enslaved. So now we're coming out to another reconstruction, which may be the last reconstruction because of what's happening in the natural world hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires. The natural world, the planet is repairing the damage we've done. And if we don't get ourselves together, it will wipe us all out. Or can wipe us down to the point where we're back in the Stone Ages. So we need to understand how to come together again. And so we need to understand what's been going on. And I think that there's a lot of confusion about what's been going on. That's why we can't get it right. So, The Slave Life Cycle by Alan Kulikoff. A slave's status as property dictated certain patterns in his or her life. Slavery shaped the ordinary business of living. Infancy, childhood, learning, courtship, marriage, family life, and old age all had unique characteristics. In the following excerpt from Tobacco and Slaves, The Development of Southern Cultures in the Chesapeake, 1680 to 1800, award-winning historian Alan Kulikoff examines the patterns of the slave's life using data from plantation records in the Chesapeake Bay area of Virginia and Maryland before the Civil War. By the 1750s, a distinctly African American life cycle had developed. African Americans lived in a succession of different kinds of households. Children under 10 years almost always lived with their mothers, and more than half the large plantations lived with both parents. Between 10 and 14 years of age, large numbers of children left their parents' homes. Some stayed with siblings and their families, others were sold, and the rest lived with other kin or unrelated people. Women married in their late teens, had children, and established households with their own children. More than two-fifths of the women on large plantations and a fifth of the small farms lived with husbands as well as children. The same proportion of men as women lived in nuclear households. But because children of separated spouses usually live with their mothers, large numbers of men, even on big plantations, lived only with other men. Single parent homes. Infancy. For the first few months of life, a newborn infant stayed with his mother. A mother would take her new infant in the fields with her and lay it uncovered on the ground while she hoed her corn rolled down and up. When she would then nurse it a few minutes and return to her labor, leaving the child in the same exposure. Eventually, the child left its mother's lap and explored the world of the hut and quarter. In the evenings, he ate with his family and learned to love his parents, siblings, and other kinfolk. During the day, the young child lived in an age-segregated world, while parents, other adults, and older siblings worked. Children were left during a great portion of the day on the ground at the doors of their huts to their own struggles and efforts. They played with the age mates or were left at home with other children and perhaps an aged grandparents. Beginning to work in the tobacco fields. Black children began to work in the tobacco fields between 7 and 10 years of age. For the first time, they joined fully in the daytime activities of adults. Those still living at home labored beside parents, brothers and sisters, cousins, uncles, aunts, and other kinfolk. Even on smaller plantations, they worked with their mothers. Most were trained to be field hands by white masters and overseers and by their parents. Though these young hands were forced to work for the master, they quickly learned from their kinfolk to work at the pace that black adults set and to practice the skills necessary to put massa on. At about the same age, some privileged boys began to learn a craft from whites or on the larger plantations from their skilled kinfolk. Charles Carroll's plantations provide an example of how skills were passed from one generation of African Americans to the next. Six of the 18 artisans on his plantation under 25 years of age in 1773 probably learned their trade from fathers and another four from other kinfolk, skilled in that occupation. For example, Joe, 21, and Jack, 19, were both coopers, and both sons of Cooper Joe, 63. Joe also learned to be a wheelwright, and in turn probably helped train his brother-in-law, Elisha, 11, and Dennis, 9, as wheelwrights. And see, this is the thing you're going to have to understand. Um, when white people say slavery wasn't so bad, they're looking at, hey, man, you guys had families and situations same way you do now. And when those of us who say slavery never ended, people look at us sideways, but if you listen to what life was like, it's very similar to now. So slavery was, yes, it was about money, but not money in and of itself. It was about the control of money, the control of other people, the control. And that's the problem with slavery. There's no control. The black people don't have any control over their lives. They don't have any control over when they work. They don't have any control over how they rear their children. They must do X, Y, and Z. And black people have settled back into that kind of thinking. I'm doing what I got to do, so I leave my child over there in the street. I leave my child in the school system, which might as well be the street. It's actually worse than the street. I leave, um, men come and go. We can't live with the women. But even back then, the family was still a little closer. You could say by force, but and we need to understand that as we're coming out of this thing, if we want to be free, we need to have control over our social situations. And it's more than an individual thing. And that's why I want to read this essay again, and I'm going to be reading through it until I complete it. Until next time, I want to say thank you for your support. Take care of your mind, take care of your body, and be safe.